what are social justice activists though? Like, what is a social justice warrior or a woke person? Like, how do we define it? Because every single time you talk about them, it's like, well, what do you really mean? What do you mean when you say? So, the way I would define it, a social justice warrior or a woke person is almost all of the time an atheist, a left-leaning person that believes in some sort of strain of socialism, Marxism, and they separate the world in good and bad people based on various factions of inherited characteristics.
Hi, I thought I'd just respond to V's new video. I think I can define what an SJW is now. Or at SJW, as he's written in the title here. I used to, a long time ago on Mind, have a Masterpost of all this stuff, because I think it's kind of quite useful to have, but at the same time it's something we all know in our heads now if we're anti-SJWs like me, and we've been watching all this stuff from the start 5 years ago or something. Was it 2015? I think I started watching anti-SJW videos back when Sean Head was one of us and not a crazy commie girl. And obviously we had Karen Strawn and Sargon of Akkad kind of leading the charge, and Chris Reagan was back on the anti-SJW side as well. Now he's off in SJW land again. Well, yeah, I think we've been taught pretty well, all the people like us who've been watching these videos, and seeing what's been happening around us, and seeing it's been affecting us, or affecting our jobs, or affecting what we can do when we go out. But I don't think V fully, if this is his video for I can fully define what an SJW is, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I think he gets off on the wrong foot to begin with his line. He straight away starts with, like, they are atheists. Well, for a start, I've known some SJWs who've been like lesbian Christians, unfortunately, so I don't think that's actually true. Yeah, so he does go on to say quite a lot of stuff that's true later on in the video, so it's worth watching V's video all the way through. But I thought, while I was commenting to him, that I managed to write down almost everything in my comment that is my definition of what an SJW is. So I thought I'd just kind of, get it off my chest and read it out as a video script. So first of all, it's probably important to note, V, that I don't think our government is right-wing here in the UK. Our Conservative government are not true Conservatives, and I think you can see that all the way to David Cameron, although Theresa May and Boris Johnson, I believe, both said they were feminists, which completely it knocks it out of the water that they'd be Conservatives at all. Yeah, it's far left. It's just the least far left party of all the far left choices of parties that we have to pick from here in the UK at the moment, which is a big shame. At least we're not in SNP land right now. That'd be like having voted Labour, I guess. Getting deeper into the far left, but Boris has betrayed us. Even though I voted him in, he's completely betrayed us. That's all I can say. I'm very disappointed. But I kind of knew that they weren't actually going to be good enough for us. Anyway, what is an SJW? Okay, well, preface it by saying communism was never really defeated in 1945, 1950, or 1975 wars, when it should have been put to bed. You know, we defeated Nazism as much as the SJWs don't think we did. We did. But we didn't defeat them. It just went underground. It slowly came out of cover and started returning to us via feminism in 2009 to 2015 period. SJWs stands for Social Justice Warriors, a label the pushback against them, i.e. us anti-SJWs, applied, to assemble their beliefs into a simple abridged phrase. SJWs believe in feminism, socialism, collectivism, identity politics, white or male privilege, and the patriarchy being real. Those are the core definition, I'd say. Then there's tons of little bits they may believe, like the wage gap, pink tax, manspreading, mansplaining, etc., all that. Belief in rape culture being real, use of cancel culture themselves, making hate speech or hate crime laws. Words are violence to them. They defend feelings and taking offence at things as if it's a meaningful thing, when they're not, if you have the mental resilience and fortitude to control your own emotional reactions to things. They don't believe in self-improvement. They're anti-borders. They're for world government. They're pro-segregation. They love diversity of race, making them racist, and gender, in a hypocritical way that excludes white people. They hate the truth of biological sex and want to believe there are thousands of genders, and that biological sexes, that's men and women, aren't real, and they can play around with them. Via gender studies and diversity bolt-on courses in universities and workplaces, they indoctrinate children and brainwash workers to their ideology. SJW isn't a derogative term, it's a shorthand label to fold all this larger definition into. They try to dismantle the language of civilization by broadening meanings of things like rape and Nazi, so that it can be any action or any person. They chase equality of outcome, communist style, which leads to massacres like the deaths of the kulaks. You can't equalize everyone, only give fair opportunity. They make rape into thousands of tiny actions and then try to make out that false rape accusations are nothing when they actually destroy people's lives utterly. They believe a homeless white person has privilege, no, over a very rich black person. They want to decolonize science and scratch it off with maths, engineering, etc., because they think it was made by white people who they are racist towards. They spend their lives over-focusing on slavery, race, and sex. They have professional self-victim mentality. They think there should be safe spaces. They think there should be trigger warnings. They talk to each other in an echo chamber of their own ideas because they block or ban or ignore debate with so many centrists and right-wingers that they lose perspective on what their political opposition even thinks about. On slavery and empires, they hate them and demand reparations from people living hundreds of years later in the present day who have no connection to the actions of their great-grandparents, or have no grandparents or relatives remotely involved in the slave trade at all. They just see your skin colour. Everyone they don't like gets called racist, sexist, misogynist, Nazi / worst thing I can think of, but they're not. They can't define Nazis, alt-rights, white supremacists and white nationalists, which is someone who openly advocates for an ethno-state. To an SJW they can never reach this definition, and have whole essays of all the different types of thing that means Nazis weren't defeated in 1945 and you're one of them. They are dominating big institutions in the world, schools, courts, media, filmmaking and arts. They now use this for propaganda. It egregiously demonizes love between men and women, particularly in the minds of women via universities and culture, and media as well. Greetings, compliments, flirting and dating are attacked full force, and women gripped by the minority of feminists are persuaded to hate men. SJWs are a vocal and aggressive minority. Most women aren't feminists. Most atheists aren't atheism plus movement. Most black people are individuals and not in a black community or in BLM. This is collectivism into activist political movements. You cannot believe what you believe. SJWs want you to need to group up into communities in order to believe it. Antifa and Black Lives Matter, the movement, not the sentiment, are violent street communists, the armies of feminism and socialism. They strategise to make it seem to the public normies, that is, uninitiated, non-political people, think the proles in Orwell's book 1984, that there are more SJWs than there really are, so they can recruit people to think like their hives. Again, like 1984, they needed an Emmanuel Goldstein, someone who didn't do anything to make into enemy number one. In 2016, this became capitalist President Donald Trump, who usurped Hillary Clinton, who feminists thought would be the first American woman president. He did nothing, was quite a normal man, but the far leftists meticulously built up a rumour persona about him, being in control of the media as they were. This media in 2016 began coming up with the buzzwords fake news and alternative truth or facts. Something that was never needed before, as there was a healthy skepticism among the public, like, don't believe what you read or see in the news. And then they tried to build a sense of authority in the news people and experts. These are the experts they chose, and trying to call experts saying the opposite to them conspiracy theorists. Trolling is disagreeing on the internet. The history of the new anti-SJWs, I'm not mentioning here, was caused by the rise of the new SJW communists. You could bring up Twitter memes or European political pendulum swings to go into that. I'm not going to go into it here, as this is about SJWs. But the rise in us anti-SJWs, this was a result of the political public's reaction to the sudden feminist and communist attacks on their normal everyday lives in the 2010s decade. Of course, the Arab Spring and ISIS plan to establish a caliphate in Europe before being physically suppressed by Western militaries, originally caused by September 11th and the War on Terror era, ties into this and helped the SJWs get a foothold. Feminism attempts to use Islam as a pawn in its long game. On two online fronts, the SJWs made their way onto the internet. One, via Gamergate, an attempt to get some ethics into games journalism like PC Gamer or Rock Paper Shotgun, which started attacking the gamers who they were paid by and who they were there to serve. And two, via YouTube internet feminist bedroom vloggers around 2009, who crowded around John Green and Hank Green and the 5 Awesome Girls channels as figureheads. This is how third wave feminism started. A hashtag campaign, #MeToo, sought to use mass rape allegations to bring down people accused, usually falsely, of rape by feminists. It did manage to find some legitimate targets to bring down who did indeed rape people, such as Harvey Weinstein, as there was evidence to show it. But mostly it divided men and women deeper, as most of the allegations were on people who did not rape anyone. As a result, men became more afraid to interact with or date women at all, for fear of losing jobs or being imprisoned for the new over-broadened definitions of rape and consent created by feminists. In games development, many feminists such as Anita Sarkeesian attacked gaming and gamers and game developers, saying that their games were sexist and that they needed to fill their teams with diverse, that's a buzzword for races and genders that SJWs approve of, developers who were inserting representation, that's more race and gender stuff, into their games, thinking that a player cannot play a game unless they are racially or sexually represented. An untrue concept, as many men played as Lara Croft in Tomb Raider, and female gamers played male characters, and the same goes for race. This mentality was a lot more deeply present in films, but SJWs controlled this institution almost entirely. Finding a Hollywood, that is a mainstream film, actor or actress who is not an SJW is extremely difficult. But actors and actresses already had a bad name with the public long before they fell to the far left, so their propaganda was losing its grip almost as soon as it started. Like Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail, the leftists, the ist denotes extremism, the far left, constantly attacks their own side for not being ideologically pure enough, alienating them and sending them to the right, as shown by the walk away hashtag, and the many people who left feminism and joined the majority of women who aren't feminists. The SJWs think personal preference is sexist and racist, so if you would be friends with a black woman or a trans man, but you wouldn't date them, they call you a racist, sexist transphobe. They believe they are progressives, their version of advancement into the future, and always changing things over and over again like a desktop wallpaper, because they are bored or don't think it's working, but their view of progress is actually a misnomer, and highly regressive, that is to say backwards looking, leading to Majid Nawaz to coin the term regressive left, seeing how they try to resurrect the dead ideologies of the world wars for our modern world that has already surpassed them in the 1990s. They also use their identity politics and collectivism to group people into treatment hierarchy called the progressive stack, a pyramid where they place the supposed most marginalised and weak or ill-treated or vulnerable at the top of a pyramid to be treated well and given free stuff. Usually the very top is something like black, disabled, trans, non-binary gendered woman, with the bottom being something like old, strong, right-wing, working-class white man. But even white women and black Republican women in the middle of the stack are targets for their ire, who they believe do not deserve rights of those at the top. They think that nationalism or localism or pride in your country is racist, as they tend to want globalism and world government without borders, where country and language and cultural differences are eradicated, and every place on the earth has homogeneous peoples who believe in their socialist ideology and are controlled and heavily taxed. In recent years, SJW has been called the woke religion, woke being a term the SJWs themselves use to describe themselves to each other casually, and religion as they have been seen to follow the same rules as non-theistic religions would, with preachers, moral guides, sacred values, infidels, and etc. Some SJWs have made it known that they are pro-paedophilia, as in people who have sex with children. Collectivizing over individualism is a big thing for these people. They will put themselves into identity politics groups, and their enemies. They will factionalize themselves and you. Everyone goes into a group. You get attacked as a group by them, not seen as an individual. Their identity politics hives they put themselves into treat themselves as a group too. Another big thing under socialism and communism and other authoritarians is heavy control that is antithetical to freedom. As a result of SJWs controlling language and the abilities of normal people to live their lives, liberty and freedom of speech advocacy grew, along with individualism on the centre-left to centre-right political anti-SJWs. And it was understood that freedom was the main thing being destroyed that had to be preserved, which gave rise to a new surge in libertarianism and classical liberalism, which, for the first time, sided with the moderate conservatives. And in 2020, of course, a confusion started by Chinese communists over a possible lab hybrid-engineered virus took hold of the world, and the fear they created led to many countries turning authoritarian and locking down, which allowed the far-left SJWs to take a much deeper grip of the world, adding more fear and beginning riots in an effort to push for a new socialist revolution, in time to coincide with the re-election or deposition by mail voting, I guess we'll see, of Donald Trump for a second term. But they had been moving so fast and making many mistakes along the way, especially giving in to rampant violence and killings, which started turning many against them, and exposing these definitions we've learnt to many amongst the public normies, and persuading many far-leftists themselves to bail out from the cause and seek a more moderate and less stressful life. Yeah, that's my definition basically of the social justice warriors, the socialists, the far left, the third wave feminists, whatever you want to call them. I prefer not to use the term woke, just because I find it annoying. The anti-SJW video makers that we've been following for the past 5 years have defined it really well, to be honest, but I guess it's quite nice to remind people. Yeah, so I thought I'd turn that comment on V's video into a video script. I kind of miss the days when people did video responses to people and they were like friendly or agreeing with them, rather than the debunk era where people would do video responses to just disagree with people or debunk, although I quite like those videos too, to be honest. Actually, YouTube used to have a feature for video replying to people, so you literally, do you want a video reply to this person's video? Right under the title, right next to the description, they had this. You click on it, upload a video, and I think your response video would appear under the description under their actual video when it's playing. That's something we've lost in YouTube land. That was around in 2009 and 2010. That's a pain in the ass to lose. But yeah, good to assemble that and amalgamate it into a video at last, as a kind of Masterpost. I'm sure I've missed a bunch of stuff, but I mean, there have been so many, thousands of debunk videos of SJWs since, let's say 2015, and I think a lot of people know now, and that's why there's the pushback, the side that I'm on, that's the side that I thought was just the losing minority like years ago. You can actually look around now and you can see tons of people who are just really angry about what SJWs have done to the world. So it's nice to remind people what that whole thing is about. And it's more intricate and thought out in places. I mean, they've written stupid books on the stuff in universities to try and persuade people into this bullshit ideology. But you can see the results of all the different socialist regimes through the world where they actually lead to. It's kind of a repeating cycle. They tend to have the same patterns and features in them. Like the people who vote in the leaders are eventually killed by the leader that they vote in, and there's, you know, a lot of starvation and bread lines, and then eventually at the end of it this leader gets deposed by their own public. I'm looking at you, Venezuela. I'm hoping they can find a way to get Maduro out, basically. But America might be about to go into what Venezuela's been in for the past few years, which is quite horrifying. Anyway, that's enough rambling for me. Cheers for watching.
Do I have the face of a little bitch?